I saw the smoke coming up from the fire that she was burnt on.
He unfortunately raped, stabbed her and put her onto a priory fire.
After killing Annette, he went on the run.
It's always on my mind that if I'd gone over and had a look at what was going on, I might have been able to stop it.
In 1989, 9-year-old Annette Wade was befriended by a fugitive living in the woods. Over several days, this wanted criminal groomed this innocent young girl into thinking they had a nice secret friendship. But he would sadly abuse that trust. He lured her into his den, where he raped and killed Annette before burning her body on a makeshift funeral pyre.
This is the classic case of a bad man grooming an innocent child.
Then he went on the run. It was every parent's worst nightmare. Annette Wade was a popular and friendly 9-year-old girl. She came from a loving home in Carlton, a quiet and well-to-do area on the outskirts of Blackpool. Ironically, her parents, Brian and Mary Wade, had moved to Carlton, hoping that their only daughter would be safer away from the main road. This was 1989, long before the days of smartphones and social media. During the school holidays, Annette would spend her days riding her BMX bike and playing out at Cotton Hall playing fields, just a few yards away from her home. But what happened to Annette would shock this quiet, rural community.
It's a nice part of town. It's an overspill of people who work in Blackpool and they live in a sort of nicer area there. It's sort of semi-rural, if you like. Their family had moved to a new house where they believed it would have been safer for her, away from main road, so she could play outside after school. You know, and she'd enjoy playing out with her friends. She had a bike. She had a watch that would beep every hour, so she'd remember to, you know, when to go home or not to stray too far from home. It was a reminder that her family just wanted to know that she was safe.
A petty but prolific criminal called John Heeley befriended the youngster. In today's language, we would say that he groomed Annette over a few days. Annette developed a secret friendship with this strange man who was known to tell fanciful and bizarre tales that may have been quite captivating to a youngster. Mr. Heeley gained the child's trust. They even exchanged gifts. Tragically, Annette probably didn't see the danger in what was being done to her. And then this supposed friendship took a very, very dark turn.
He was sort of lived the itinerant lifestyle, and he'd been staying in a lodging house in Blackpool, and people had complained about his behaviour, and his the lodgers, the family who he was lodging with, they threw him out. The local community had enough of this guy because they'd seen him in the area, and his strange behaviour, his approaching children and inappropriate conversation with children, and they confronted him. And he produced a baseball bat, and he'd come back and threaten the people. So the police were involved, and he was remanded to a bail hostel in Blackburn. And he was living in that bail hostel for only a short amount of time when he went missing. And that's when he returned to Polton and Carlton and moved into the bushes, into the fields, to set up this sort of den in a hedgerow.
He was living behind the castle gardens in the woods, if you like. I used to go through where the woods are to go to the shops. So I'd see him in there, didn't think anything other than he was homeless and living rough.
She was walking home from school and this guy was camping out, living off the land, as Dad call it. Befriended her a couple of days prior, and Annette agreed to meet up with him in secret after school one day.
On the day that it happened, I actually saw the murderer in the Castle Gardens car park, and he was trying to break into cars, and I shooed him off, got rid of him, and then later on that evening I heard that there was something happened on the fields, and then it came out in the news it was Annette that had been murdered in the do.
He unfortunately raped, stabbed her, and put her onto a priory fire to burn her to death.
After burning little Annette's body, Heeley went on the run. He had got his hair cut and stolen a car earlier that day, and then set off towards Dover so he could escape to France.
Probably about 6 o'clock on the evening that the murder happened, I saw the smoke coming up from the fire that she was burnt on.
Right.
Saw the smoke
So
somewhere in that thicket there.
So you were in that house there,
Yeah,
and the smoke was...
more or less where that is there. Bit of rough land. It's always on my mind that if I'd gone over and had a look at what was going on, I might have been able to stop it, but it was too late by then. I didn't find out that anything had happened until I got back into the area about 11 o'clock at night, and there was police everywhere.
In an even stranger twist, the wanted criminal even picked up a hitchhiker along the way. By tea time, Heeley's face was all over the news. It had become a nationwide manhunt.
Stole a car, drove it all the way, trying to get to Dover to cross over into France. He made the mistake of putting the wrong fuel in the car, so it broke down halfway to Dover, managed to hitch a ride from a trucker, and then he got arrested at Dover trying to escape the country into France. But there was obviously an England-wide manhunt for him.
This very quickly was national news headlines, and not just because of the nature of the crime itself. After killing Annette, he went on the run.
With the police frantically searching for this dangerous criminal, they had no choice but to release a mugshot of Heeley, along with his name, in the national press. It was highly unusual at the time, but they were desperate to find him.
The premeditated nature of the crime, you know, he'd got his hair cut the day before the murder, he'd bought a passport the day before the murder, he'd stolen a car ready to make his escape. He knew what he was going to do. But he doesn't flee Blackpool straight away. He goes to the pub and has a drink in the pub, and then he picks up a hitchhiker on his way down south. It's strange.
Annette's murder shocked the community. How could such a dreadful thing happen in this quiet village? Parents were overcome by grief and fear. What if this could happen again to another child?
Devastated the community. All the kids were on lockdown until eventually they caught him. But there was a major police investigation, and he was caught coming back into the country from France. There was a big police presence while they were searching and everything, but like the kids were locked in the houses, they weren't allowed out in the parks or anything until it was all resolved.
I would imagine that the horror around what had happened was also compounded by the fact that people knew that this guy, there was something not right about this guy, and the authorities were alerted about this guy. He'd been arrested, I think, 3 times in the days before the murder. So he was very much on the police's radar, he was very much on the public radar. So I think that horror will have been mixed with a sort of how was this allowed to happen? How was this guy free to do this? And whereas he didn't have these sort of crimes on his criminal record, he had quite a lengthy criminal record, and his behaviour was certainly odd and bizarre.
He used to go onto Devonshire Road and Corn Street, basically with a tie around his head, you know, portraying Rambo, lorry drivers used to shout out "Oiko cheese." Yeah, he fancied himself as like an Indian. He was a very strange character indeed. He used to go into the convenience store on the corner of Selborne Road and buy sweets for the children at school, and he got himself quite a bad reputation in the end.
The way he had looked in the dock, he was powerfully built, he looked very rough and ready, he was heavily tattooed, he looked untidy, and because obviously he'd been caught after a manhunt and he was there in the dock handcuffed to a police officer, he looked extremely uneasy, and he sort of shifted from side to side. It looked like he could have bounded from that dock.
So here is Heeley with the police officers during the trial. The jury was brought out to the murder scene, and you can be seen here being accompanied, looking at what was going on. As the jury were told about the scene of the crime. I think there was a difficulty for the police at the point where he was involved in petty crimes, because he was awaiting trial and for a break-in, but that wasn't the sort of offence where he could be held in custody, so he had to be freed. And this was the case of all of the different little criminal situations he was involved in ahead of the murder. They're not the sort of crimes that you would be remanded in custody for, so there was probably a difficulty there.
Join us after the break to hear about John Heeley's court trial and how locals in Carlton are honouring Annette Wade 30 years on.
I actually got to read for myself what actually happened. Mum and Dad never actually told me.
This is every parent's nightmare, this story.
Welcome back. Now we meet a former court reporter who remembers the day when John Heeley appeared in the docks at Fleetwood Magistrates Court.
Back in July 1989, at the time that the John Heeley case came forward, I was working as a reporter on the Fleetwood paper. I'd been a reporter for about 9 months. Came down to the Magistrates Court maybe once a week, fairly minor matters, driving offences, drug offences, assault cases, but nothing of the magnitude of the John Heeley case. Before any serious case, it doesn't matter how serious it is, even if it's a serial killer, before it goes to Crown Court, it will appear at the first instance in front of a magistrate's court, and there obviously it will be transferred to the higher court. So no matter how serious a case, it always appears first at a magistrate's court, which is, obviously, because it's a magistrate's court, a lot of those cases are very minor matters. So matters of murder, serious sexual assault, they always stand out. It's always one of the more serious cases that you'd hear at a court like that. The interest was huge. It wasn't like a normal case. So outside, there were lots of young men, very, very angry, wanted to get at John Heeley and try and shake him or kick him or whatever they want. They were very angry about it. There was a heavy police presence because they had to stop that kind of thing from happening and keep them back. And inside the court, normally you might get 1, 2, 3 reporters at the most from the local agencies. Sometimes no reporters would be there. But on this occasion, the courtroom was absolutely packed with national reporters, people from The Sun, the Daily Express, the Star, the Mirror. A completely different scenario, a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz.
Made headlines across the country. The police made what was a fairly unusual decision at the time to release the picture of him and details of his name, or it was certainly seen as unusual in the help that the public could help track him down, such as a desperation to find him. It was of note at the time. It was certainly a point people raised, and the police answered questions about that. Because people were sort of saying, well, there's no, the identity could be an issue in a criminal trial, and giving this guy's identity away and saying what he's suspected to have done. But it was certainly felt at the time. It's certainly part of the story at the time was, gosh, it's quite unusual for the police to tell us who this guy is and release a picture of him. And release a picture of him that's clearly a police mugshot, so that the public will know he's known to the police previous offences.
He was handcuffed to the police officer. It looked like he wanted to jump out of the dock and do a runner, But then when the the clerk to the court started to speak, he kept down. He looked down, kept his face downwards, didn't look up. It was quite still suddenly, and after about 3 or 4 minutes, they dealt with the case. He was remanded in custody, and he was taken down. So that was that, really. But then outside, obviously, he had to be taken from the dock back to the cells, back to the prison, and that would mean he was taken in a van. And outside, all these young men that had been gathering to try and get him saw the van. They knew exactly what was going on, and they tried to jump the van. They were kicking it, banging on the door, chasing it, and it was quite a scene before it drove away. The court officials, his defence solicitor, were aware that Heeley was running high about him, and I seem to recall they said something like it would be better for him if he was remanded in custody anyway, apart from the seriousness of the case, for his own protection, because it was clear that with Heeley running high, there could be a danger he might be attacked by men. There was a lot of people milling outside. Heeley was running high, angry men, a danger that he could be attacked, and that was mentioned at that first hearing, that he'd be remanded in custody for his own protection because of how strong the feeling was about the alleged crime.
On April the 25th, 1990, John Heeley went on trial at Liverpool Crown Court. At the end of a 3-week trial, the jury took less than 2 hours to find him guilty of Annette Wade's murder. He is currently serving a life sentence. A year later, Brian and Mary Wade gave birth to a little boy. They named him David. Today, he still lives in Carlton, and although he sadly never got to meet his older sister Annette, her murder had a lasting impact on his life.
I've literally just got picked up to and from school, even from high school, never allowed to walk home, never allowed to play out, never allowed to go to any birthday parties or anything. Got invited to loads. I was literally not allowed out of the house at all. Even at 16, I had to rebel and walk out of the house just to have a sleepover around the corner at a friend's house. And Mum and Dad never actually told me actually what happened. That she just said she was unfortunately killed, but never said how, why. When I was in the loft and I found like a woman's magazine that did a 2-page story on it, was when I actually got to read for myself all the details of what actually happened, because not until I read that magazine myself.
Today, this is a new build housing estate. Families moving into these homes may well be unaware that something so tragic and awful happened right on a doorstep. But the developers agreed they should do something in memory of the little girl who lost her life all those years ago. And David, with the help of Graham Shaw, has been fundraising and fighting to get this playground opened in Annette's name, to keep her memory alive.
I realised when I looked at the plans that there was a park actually in the middle of the estate. Then when I looked where the park was, it showed that the position of the park was more or less where Annette was killed. So I put my mind together, contacted a few other people around the area, and then we pushed forward with making it a priority to get the park approved and passed. If we'd have been able to finish it and dedicate it in time in September 2024, that would have been marking the 35 years of Annette's death.
People are going to come in not knowing the area, not knowing the history, and it's good to educate. It's good to not forget about what happened in such a tiny village, you know, and to teach the future generations that, you know, you might feel comfortable letting your kid out and roam around and all this, and they might have been able to roam around when they were younger, but it's a reminder of this thing can happen. it has happened in the past, I'm not saying it'll happen in the future, but always be mindful that it can happen. I've had a huge response from a lot of people who grew up with Annette, who went to school with Annette, and who have donated, and still who want to try and say they're sorry to me for the condolences for it to happen, and that she was a brilliant girl, always so fun, playful, always happy all the time. So they said to let me know when the memorial is happening, because they want to come down and they want to meet me and meet my mum again. So I would love to meet them and get to know Annette through their eyes.
Annette's story is a tragic reminder of the lengths that predators will go to gain a child's trust. And today, social media has made it even easier for those with evil intentions to hide in plain sight. But stranger danger exists in all walks of life.
She was just walking home from school. This is when phones weren't really around. Social media never existed. Internet barely existed. And this was a brazen man that approached a young schoolgirl in broad daylight, walking home from school. So if someone can do it back then, 1989, it's like over 35 years ago. And nowadays you've got people behind a keyboard that could be anyone at any age. You never know who they are. So you got to think that if someone can do that 30 odd years ago without social media, then with social media, it's even easier for these predators to prey upon children.
Because this is the classic case of a bad man grooming an innocent child and taking advantage of that in the worst possible way. And sadly, that's a sort of crime that we could still see today. I think it's that classic thing of innocence and evil. It's an evil man taking advantage of an innocent child, and how the whole thing unfolded. That was just so awful that made it stand out, if you like. And it's one of those cliches that we use in journalism, that every parent's nightmare, but this is every parent's nightmare, this story, writ large. It's just awful from start to finish.
I think about it every year when we go see her at Christmas and want to see me dad on our anniversary, because he's buried in the same spot as Annette. It's a bit hard to want to say to my mum, I don't miss her, because I never know her. I never knew her. I never met her, so you can't miss someone you've never met. It's impossible, regardless of the family or not. I don't know her. I've never met her. I would have loved the chance to have met her, known her. I say she'd be mid-40s by now. About 44 now she would be. So it'd be nice to know her as a big sister, to actually have someone to grow up with.